Well, hello there, everybody. It's high noon here in Chicago, and that can only mean one thing. It's time for yet another fall publishing webinar. I'm Chris Beytes, editor of GrowerTalks and Green Profit magazines and the e-newsletter Acres Online, and I'm going to be your host for the next 50 minutes or so as we tackle today's topic. You see it right there on your screen, I hope. Princettia, Euphorbias, Culture Clinic, and Marketing Opportunities. Now, let me set the stage here. Some of you may be familiar with Princettias already, and others may have little or no idea what they are. In a nutshell, it's one of several new interspecific hybrid Euphorbias that resemble, in many ways, traditional poinsettias, but which offer unique traits for the end consumer and which grow just a bit differently than regular poinsettias. And that's why we're hosting today's webinar, to give you every detail you need to grow Princettia, plus some great marketing ideas to help you sell more of them. Now, as usual, I am not the expert on the topic. So who is? Well, I've got two of them today. And the first, well, she's right there. She's Delilah Onofrey. She's who was at one time was my counterpart over at Greenhouse Grower magazine, but today is Suntory Flowers sales and marketing representative for North America. Welcome, Delilah.
Thanks, Chris.
All right, now Delilah, you know, one of the fun things about webinars, I've said this before, is that you can do them from anywhere on the planet. You have an internet connection and a decent computer. So where are you broadcasting from today, my dear?
Well, I'm in the Cleveland area. It's sunny today, but still very cold. So I'm getting very used to living in 0 temperatures.
The deep freeze. Now, knowing you, I would think that you'd be broadcasting right now from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Oh, I wish. No, actually, I'm just in my home. I work from home.
All right, next time, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Now, Delilah is going to be covering the introduction to Princettia and what it is, beyond what I just told you, along with some of the cool marketing ideas, including some cool ideas from Japan. But for the technical grower stuff, well, we need a grower, and we have one. That would be my good friend, Mike Gooder, the co-owner, along with his lovely wife, Rachel, of Plantpeddler. Welcome, Mike.
Glad to be on board, Chris.
All right, and you are broadcasting from where today, my friend?
Can't beat it. Where everybody wishes they were, Cresco, Iowa. You know, beautiful northeast Iowa, perfectly in the middle of nowhere, as you once stated.
Perfectly in the middle. You know what? Do you know what Cresco means, Mike? I did a little bit of research because I'm that kind of guy. Do you know what Cresco means?
Well, it's not a lard type cooking oil, so I'm not really sure what Cresco stands for.
Cresco, little factoid here, is Latin for I grow. How about that?
That's pretty appropriate. I really appreciate
that.
Yeah.
I did think that it might be Latin for deep fried, but no. It's Latin
pork
for
or bacon, yeah.
Something like that, but it is Latin for I grow. So, well, and as usual, okay, cracking the jokes, but keeping everything on track and informative. Your faithful host is working the controls from the Ball Publishing Broadcast Studios on Town Road in West Chicago, Illinois, where I think it's a balmy 20 degrees today, so we're fine. I don't know what that is in Celsius.
We're sending snow your way.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, I should have gotten a Celsius for our listeners in Japan and Australia, because I know we're going to have some of those today. So, and I want to make sure that everybody's got good sound out there. Patty is saying she doesn't hear the audio, so she's not hearing this, but everybody else seems to be. So hopefully nobody's having any audio problems out there. I'll send a quick little note to Patty to tell her to redial in as we get going here. Now, a few little housekeeping things. And first of all, we have to thank our sponsor, in this case, Suntory Flowers, for making this webinar possible and free to all the listeners out there. And questions. Now, as we go along, you may have some questions. Chances are good you will. I know I did. Use the chat area that you see over on the right-hand side of your screen, the control panel area. That's the easiest one for us. Just type it in there, send it to us, and as we go along, I'll get to those questions if they kind of fit the topic we're on, or I might save them for the end during our Q&A period. But either way, we'll do our best to get to them. And if you want more information about Princettia, and all the other Suntory flower varieties, either while you're listening in or afterwards. Go to suntorycollection.com to check that out. And people always ask, are you going to archive this? Oh, good, Patty's on. Hey, Patty, how are you? Good to hear you out there. If you want to relive this entire webinar, maybe minus the jokes at the beginning, or if you have to leave halfway through, a customer comes in or something important, we always archive our webinars at ballpublishing.com/webinars. It's the same place you can sign up for our webinars. That is really convenient. So I think I've got all the housekeeping out of the way. With that, Delilah, you all set to go?
Yes, I am. Well, thank you very much. Right. Boy, the timing of this is just perfect. People are booking their poinsettia programs. I'm getting all kinds of questions about Princettia, especially related to the production and cultural information. So we are really so thrilled to have grower-to-grower advice provided by Mike after my introductory presentation. So let's begin with what are Princettia euphorbias. So as Chris mentioned, it is a brand of interspecific hybrids, and actually these are bred in Australia through a joint venture that Suntory has called Bonza Botanicals. So that is where all the work's being done on Princettia. And so even though these are cousins of the traditional Christmas poinsettias, these have, additional traits that are improvements as far as growth habit, durability, color, and so there's the bright, vibrant, unique colors, compact plant form, excellent branching, more flower clusters, but smaller bracts. It creates a centerpiece type of look, a different look. People have raved about the extended shelf life, both on the bench and at retail. If you can't ship right away, they'll look good for a long time. And also, the plants are more heat tolerant and durable in the landscapes, which we'll show you more towards the end of the presentation. So first I'll cover the key colors. So we have a really good spectrum of really gorgeous pinks. I'm starting with the dark Princettia dark pink, the darkest of the 3 pink varieties, and I was pleased to learn that this was one of the favorites of the student sale at the University of Florida, which just does a wonderful job with the trials and the plant sale. And then, in the mid-range, we got the Princettia hot pink, this really nice, vibrant bubblegum pink, creates all kinds of new possibilities for decorating and what you can mix together. So this is the mid-range color, the hot pink. And then pink, which is the lightest of the pinks, also offers some unique color schemes. Retailers have commented that it is more of like a cooler shade, more in the lilac family. So that in itself is a designer color that, that our interiorscaper noted as well. And the 3 pinks mix very nicely together, very uniform, the 3 colors. Right here you can see Plantpeddler did tricolor 12-inch bowls that really just made fantastic arrangements that you could sell for considerably more at retail. And then this beautiful Princettia tree that you see, this was at the Beam Suntory headquarters outside Chicago in Deerfield. So we worked with Plantpeddler on the plants, and then Mimosa, leading interiorscape company, and did a nice Christmas surprise for all the employees at Beam Suntory this past season. So in addition to the 3 pinks, there's Max White, which is more of a standalone. It does behave differently. It is more vigorous and upright, but people are really intrigued by, how white that plant is. So as you can see side by side with White Star, which is the leading white in the poinsettia market, this is white as paper, Max White is, but you can also see that the way the flowers and bracts are presented is a completely different look, opens new ideas for combinations and things like that.
It might be worth mentioning there, Delilah, too, is that feathering is seen on those flowers there. We'll talk about that more as we go through the discussion, but it is a little bit different look to the flower because of the feathering.
Yes. So, why carry Princettia? We all want to get out of the commodity trap. This is an opportunity to differentiate So these are unique genetics that are noticeably different in their color and form. So if you treat them differently, maybe they can be perceived differently, move behind, the typical stereotype. Consider new uses. I showed you an example for interiorscape. In some markets where it doesn't get below 40, you could do landscape. There's value-added combinations. That picture right there is a nice forest grade dish garden with Christmas cactus. So all kinds of things are possible if people want to try. And then, so this past season, we focused on getting Princettia into growers' production, and we worked with Plantpeddler on that. We had sent 100 cuttings to 100 growers. So now I'll let Mike take it from here to go into the nitty-gritty of all the culture and production related to Princettia.
Thank you for the introduction, Delilah. And this is an opportunity for all of us growers to find out a little bit more about Princettia. Not unlike Chris, I really don't claim to be the world expert on Princettia. We have produced it here for several years in volume this last year, really in our first large-scale production run of it. I have followed up with a lot of growers in Europe and Asia to try to make sure we have a good understanding of the culture, and we'll continue to do work on some of the nuances of it. I think what's really important to kind of get a grasp for what we're talking about Princettia is the comparison that is important between what we know went on with vegetative petunias and then in the future became calibrachoa. And in both of these instances, Suntory was the leader behind the development of vegetative petunias, which really revolutionized the petunia field. And then later, through interspecific cross, they introduced calibrachoa as million bells, and of course we know that really changed plants forever. Calibrachoa now is the leading category in spring annuals. So if you put in context where we sit with regular poinsettias, our traditional poinsettias are very similar to where we are with petunia, surfinia, and other vegetative petunias. We kind of are at an end road, although we've created new colors. We've kind of taken that down a path. And then you would compare Princettia to calibrachoa, new introduction. We market it slightly different. We grow it differently in the greenhouse. And it's those little adjustments between petunia and calibrachoa that represent the little changes and adjustments and opportunities that we should make when comparing poinsettia to Princettia, both in greenhouse and in marketing. Just some general overview of some of the things that I think are important when you start considering the production of Princettia. It's a little different animal. It really requires a lot less work in the greenhouse. If you asked our growers, and I spoke to Jason this morning about it, it's a simpler crop. Don't overcomplicate this one. When you look at some of the struggles that we go through with height management, disease management, and traditional poinsettias, we feel Princettia is easier to grow, easier with height management, pest, and disease. Really more applicable to our moderate-sized containers, 4, 4.5, 6s. Delilah showed the bowls we do. It really fits well in a bowl and pan program where you're trying to define a different niche. Your overall production timing is similar to poinsettia. So not unlike calibrachoa, which times roughly the same as petunia. Here we're saying if you have a good poinsettia schedule, you should be pretty close to it. Because of the compact nature, if you're growing bigger plants, you may want to add an extra front end week, a starting week, or a long day week as it might be called. We do see a strong root system all the way through from our rooting practices and into production. That root system looks like it has good tolerance to most known diseases. And the other part about the plant that we think is pretty cool is it has a long sales window. You'll see early color, it matures slowly, it lasts a long time, so it does give you quite a bit of opportunity for sales. Some more of the comparison items. As Delilah showed in those pictures, there's consideration when you're going to play with Max White versus the pinks. The pinks have a natural kind of a gumdrop, a mounded, very mounded form, with flowers displayed at 180 degrees. The Max White is very pure in white, but it is higher vigor and a little more upright by nature, a little wiry in the stems. But it's a real fresh look. You do see potential for feathering in all of the Princettia, which means we do get some splitting in the flower, we get some inside bract leaves. But those, especially in the Max White, we did a lot of consumer testing and feedback and that from landscapers and retailers, and it was not distracting. Actually, quite a few people commented they like that look. When you're thinking PGRs, really lay low. There really is not a requirement for most growers with the pink varieties. We'll talk a little bit about some adjustments for Max White. Another thought is that in Asia and Europe, this is grown in a lot of places without pinch, so you can eliminate that labor in the production. Talking about some of the scheduling, the hard timing varies, and some of the information that I was able to gather, for the most part, we feel is around a 7.5 to 8 week variety. Because of this gradual maturity, it is not quite as precise as, say, Prestige, that we know it's a certain week that we really look for it to be in bloom. In our testing and trialing work, and in generally what we have found for most growers, this will time in for late November, so about peak market. You can black cloth this for any time of sale within the year. Originally, it was promoted for off-season production. We do feel that the best opportunity for growers is the October through December window. So we don't talk a lot about some of the other things in this presentation, but you can time it for all seasons. And of course, if you're doing it during short day periods, you would want to light it for day length extension. This is a possible production scenario that may work for quite a few of you growers. This gives you some timings for a few dates. As you can see, timing for October through an early December flowering, and that gives you some approximate start dates. We will probably see a little faster finish on that early summer potted crop because you're going to get the effect of longer days during the start period, some optimal starting window there. So you may time a little faster. I do feel that 10-12 date is a good target date for, say, a breast cancer program that you might be doing or cancer awareness because of the fact that it helps you get a start after the Memorial Day weekend. And as you can see, based on our experience, you're going to be able to start shipping it about a week ahead of that schedule, so you still could make a fairly easy early October ship date for that purpose. Additional comments down below you might want to consider is that if you're going smaller containers, this is really set for a 6-inch one plant you would drop a week. If you're going in a 6.5 and you really want to bulk it up, I would for sure probably add a week back to what we've suggested here. And then just remembering a little on the Max White side, we have worked with Cycocell post-pinch. We'll talk about that some more as we go forward. One of the key points that we have found with this variety is really observation of temperature. It does like to be grown and especially finished a little warmer than what we've been doing with traditional poinsettias of recent, where we have a lot of cool finishing varieties, and all of us are trying to finish a little cooler. So this is one plant that I do recommend holding your temperatures up on, especially as we come through the finish side, to make sure we get maximum bract expansion for best display. We did have comments back from our grower trial about small bracts, and I feel that a lot of those were instances where we were finishing cool, did not get maximum expansion. We'll also talk about another technique for bract expansion as we go further into the discussion today.
All right. So, Mike, you would not recommend this for anybody who's really on a cool growing regime, like for energy savings or something like that?
From our experience, and we tend to be warmer growers, Chris, so we're probably a little bit biased in our numbers, but from what our feeling is right now, this is one of the poinsettia group that you would consider warm start, warm finish.
All right. But if you're growing it early, like for October sales, that's a little easier anyway. So.
Yeah, if you're growing it for that early market, it's going to require quite a bit less energy to get it to full bract expansion. Because of the lower vigor of this plant, and we sometimes see this with growers producing other traditional poinsettias that are low vigor varieties, the general tendency is to treat all poinsettias as one block, and you tend to overwater those low vigor and overfeed those low vigor varieties. This is definitely the case we feel with growers that are looking to poinsettia. You're going to want to manage your water and fertility levels as poinsettia, not as the general block of poinsettias. This will help you in managing some of the pest pressure that may be coming from fungus gnats and shore flies. It will also help you get the feed at the right level for the plant. It is still a poinsettia. We still recommend that you keep your feed levels adequate for production of poinsettias. So a lot of times we see where people cut back on water frequency, they're also cutting back on their fertility level, so you can run into low nutrition. At heart, It wants that feed. It is a poinsettia, so don't be afraid to keep your fertility levels up while you manage your water. Talked a little bit about the tendency or the efforts in Europe and Asia to produce with no pinch. So when you're thinking about this plant, it's going to want to over-branch. If there's one thing we see for sure in our production of the last few seasons is that you do not want to allow too many breaks or you'll get small flowers. Now, if that's the effect you're after, that's cool. Leave a lot of extra nodes. Otherwise, my basic recommendation on this plant would be leave no more than one node visible for the break count you are after. So if you're after a 5 or 6, if you leave 6 nodes up, you most likely on Princettia will get one node below the soil line to break, so you will still end up at your branch count. It is very free branching by nature. You typically pre-pinch, as this photo shows, you're going to see the breaks are emerging on these varieties. We will do some work with Agio and Florel this year to see if we can branch without pinch, and we'll have more data on that as we proceed with this year's crop. But growers that are astute to using those products may want to play around with a no-pinch program.
Any hint how it might do as a standard or a straight up or anything else where you kind of manipulate the plant a bit, Mike?
Yeah, I think because you could do it as a standard, I think you'd have a lot of side apicals to remove in that process. So it probably doesn't lend itself much to standard forms very easily, although it make a cute little tree. So that would be just a matter of can you afford the labor to do all that de-shooting. But, you know, anything's a possibility. It is adaptive. It does form, the pink varieties at least form a very good, thick primary stem and also good lateral attachment. So it would work well for that application if you wanted to go through the effort.
All right, but if it likes to branch, let it branch, I say.
Let it branch. A few tips that were received from some trial work that was done during the poinsettia, recent poinsettia trial, national poinsettia trials from Florida, North Carolina State, and Ontario. And this does relate some to that max white feathering issue that I have discussed earlier in the conversation. So you may see some breaking, natural splitting that occurs in the actual RCs, the rooted cuttings. And when you go to have that plant pre-pinch, you want to pinch below that natural tendency to split. We have not seen that a problem, but max white was very limited in availability last year, so our trial block was not that large. It does branch very well. It is a little bit more, as I mentioned, wiry. It is a little bit stringy, not to the point where it's distracting, but you do want to make some cultural adjustments and know what you're working with. So that's why we do recommend a little bit more towards growth regulator treatments on the white. Also, as it mentions there, you may want to use a cage on 6 or 6.5 for it. We did not see any problems with it wanting to spread late in production, but those are just heads up that you might want to be aware of. The color is so special. I do feel the Max White has a place in a lot of people's programs as a standalone pure white. The color is truly impressive, but we have to work with it. And we do expect to see improvements and reselection work that is going on at Suntory over the next couple seasons on the white.
Would you consider it kind of fragile, like Freedom, Mike, or you mentioned having maybe growing them in a cage?
Yeah, it's because of the nature, probably a little thinner stemmed would be the only reason I would consider cage. We did not see any of it doesn't develop that big, heavy bract that wants to pull the plant apart at finish. The bracts are light, thin, and very up. So I don't think that'll be a problem that we would see with a traditional poinsettia as much. And I do think that a little bit of PGR early in the cycle just to help stiffen it up will probably accomplish what everybody wants within that plant. So one, maybe a couple applications for the guys, especially down south, but it should be workable plant. I would definitely recommend trying, if you're going to play with the Princettia set, you need to trial Max White just because the color is so unique. Basically, the same kind of disease and pest management protocols that you would find for a good finished poinsettia program are applicable when we're talking about Princettia. So we want to do our normal monitoring of pests and disease. We may have seen slightly fewer white fly. We didn't have much pressure this year, but in review, there really does not look like there's a huge difference as far as attractiveness and maybe a little less attractive. Fungus gnats I mentioned earlier in the water management portion. Because there's a tendency to overwater this and start, you may want to watch closely. Fungus gnats, shore flies could also be a problem in that situation. The root systems appear very strong. There's a good, strong root system in the early stage of the crop. We see that root hold up well to finish. We do not have any fear that this is a weak series that you're going to have to do a lot of fungiciding on. I would monitor closely, use preventative protocols, but you can probably get by pretty lightly with drench-type fungicides. And with all poinsettias, and especially because this does mature very slowly, you may have some pretty ripe plants. You'd be watchful for botrytis at the finish point, but no inherent changes or big risks that we see over traditional poinsettia production. The growth habit of the plant is that gumdrop or very mounded form. And this is best achieved by maintaining adequate space. The plant in this picture that is on the right appears to me that it was grown a little tight. That is not at our facility, to my knowledge anyway. The plant that's on the left kind of gives you the impression of what the plant should look like. You should be able to get a 180-degree display of flowers, but that comes through adequate space. If you do grow it tight, like any plant, you're going to get a more upright display of that flowering. So I mentioned to growers, because of the compact nature, if you use pretty much your standard 6-inch spacing, it's going to be probably adequate to get that nice mounded form. You can, if necessary, use a little bit of cyclocell post-pinch. Again, it might vary by your location geographically, but I would be hesitant for most growers to apply a lot in growth regulators until you've grown it for a season or two. Max White's a little different. Again, following back up on what I said, an application of cyclocell, some people may want that pre-pinch, some post-pinch. What we have found success in is in that 750 to 1250 rate, about inch to inch and a half breaks, which would be very typical of standard poinsettia production. The finishing part, and I use premium here as an example because a lot of people have experienced premium. When it first came out, one of the challenges was how do we get this thing to size, and it was found that premium grows all the way to finish. Princettia is the same way. We were a little nervous as we were growing for Suntory, for Jim Beam, and for other applications of having a big finished plant, and that plant really surprised us in that it continued to grow all the way right through the finish period. It also continues to expand bracts all the way through the cycle. We did keep it warm, which we feel. We did test some plants at cooler temperatures, and we did not get the full expansion that we were hoping to see at the cooler. So again, go back, finish it warm, get your bract size that you want it before you cool. We have successfully trialed fascination. We did it at the 3 ppm rate here at Plantpeddler. 2 weeks out, we saw no negative effects at all from fascination to help with bract expansion. If it is a concern for you, I might be hesitant to go up to 5 ppm because 3 looked effective. We have not experimented with any fascination drenches. I know there's a few companies that have been working with fascination drench also for bract expansion on poinsettia. I do not believe that's on the label at this time. We did definitely see good characteristics of Cyathea, both from development, slow development, and also for them holding up during the life cycle of the product. So good features with Cyathea management. If there's takeaway advice, it's pretty simple. This is it's a simple crop to produce. This is one that I recommend growers play with. You start with your normal poinsettia culture. Takeaway message being take out some of the PGRs and some of the other struggles that we've had. Really feel from a grower's perspective that this is an opportunity for us to produce a crop that's not a commodity at Christmas. In the marketplace, try to work on ways to distinguish yourself with this as a niche product, sell it separately, try to garner a little more money out of your crop by using Princettia in it. We are available, I am available, and my growers to give any advice to people that are looking at producing it. We will have good availability of Princettia in rooted cuttings through the period for October to December flowering. So if there's anything we can do to help support growers have an opportunity to producing this crop, we really think it makes sense to give us a new opportunity during the Christmas market.
Mike, before we move away from production and into the marketing side of things, we do have a question on post-harvest. This is from Laurie, who I'm guessing is a retailer. She writes in that we had some Princettias at Christmas, and customers really loved the look of them, but they did not hold up as well as, quote, regular poinsettias. The bracts started falling off by mid-December. This happened in our store and in people's homes. Why did this happen? Got any guesses, Mike?
Yeah, you know, I
think we lost Mike there.
Yeah.
he apparently ran from that question. Delilah, can you tackle that, or as he dials back in, we'll address that question.
Yeah, that's the first I had heard of it, so I will take that question back to Suntory and our global expertise and see if I can find out exactly what could have been the problem there, because the other reports I've heard is they can handle the drafts and all that more, so I'm really not sure what happened in this particular case.
All right. Well, while we wait for Mike to get back, perfect timing. He did mention that they may have some customer issues where he may have to put us on mute or something like that. But hey, perfect timing. We're going to dive right now into, well, as I said before, as we were sort of going through this PowerPoint, I told Mike that you don't make money growing anything, including Princettias. You make money selling it. So Delilah, help us sell and market more of these Princettias.
Yes, it's my pleasure to share, what's been happening all over the world with it. And just like in the States, there's the resistance to try to challenge, the prevailing commodity mentality and red and Christmas. And so the first couple of years, it was a struggle to get people to even think outside the Christmas window, even though we had people try for Valentine's Day, breast cancer, and even spring items and nice combinations for spring. So now we recircled and said, instead of fighting the natural tendencies of the industry, let's get these premium pinks into the Christmas mix. Let's go for the October opportunity as well. So once people gain more experience, like what we just did with the sample program, then we can talk about these things outside of the norm. So let's begin by sharing, what we've seen in Japan and Europe. So this is, the whole goal is to position Princettia as a premium item, and because it's more compact, the recommended sizes are 4-inch, 6-inch, mixed bowls in combination, premium colors for Christmas. The breast cancer awareness, even though October is normally a fall color time of year, everybody knows the pink ribbon, and there's all kinds of grassroots efforts, so many local opportunities and people with connections to the cause. It's a wonderful way to support it. And another thing that's been most successful internationally is to use the Princettia brand, not just throw it out there anonymously. So when the consumer picks it up and says, this looks familiar, it looks similar to the Christmas plant that I love, but it is a little different. And why is it different? Oh, this is Princettia, and that kind of thing. So here's an example of the pink ribbon campaign in Japan, and Suntory in Japan, the domestic market, very connected and successful as far as pull through at retailer, pull through, coordinating the contract production, the whole supply chain to the consumer. And this particular picture was at a bookstore. So they did a pink ribbon campaign, and they cross-merchandised the plants along with all kinds of books about health and wellness. So they got the plants sold at all kinds of non-traditional retailers for a limited amount of time, as well as other types of retailers. And then here's a typical, nice florist, very popular premium item at the florist level, more so than the discounter. The idea is not to position this as a discounted item, but a premium item.
That's a gorgeous display, by the way. I really like that.
Yeah, and the charitable component in Tokyo, they have a Run for the Cure, and the partner sponsor is New Balance, the famous sportswear, tennis shoes. So people in the race, they contributed money, they got a plant from Suntory, and then they participated in the Run for the Cure, which is in the fall, like October or November timing. And you can see our team from Suntory. Right in the middle there is my colleague Masashi Matsumura holding his daughter. He runs regularly and represented us in the race. And beyond, cancer and wellness and pink ribbons, there's all kinds of fun pink campaigns, whether it's Hello Kitty, so popular in Japan and well known in the States as well. This is in the Ginza shopping district, the Hello Kitty store, and, special cross merchandising. And then in the next slide, you'll see limited edition collectible Hello Kitty dolls made just for Princettia.
Now, I got to admit, I'm a sucker for this one. This is so cool.
Yeah, it really is. And I do believe, there's a whole separate licensing entity in the States we could work with, and Princettia and princesses and Disney. I mean, the opportunities are just great. And so there's so much more we could do. I mean, like one dream I have is at Christmas time at Disney, every hotel room at Disney resorts, you would get a Princettia plant in your room, and the girls could be princesses at the Magic Kingdom. It could be a lot of fun. Plant them in the landscapes.
Okay.
Oh, and Mike's back.
I'm back,
okay.
finally.
Well, we're going
the guy
holding
the two pieces of wire together outside connecting us to the telegraph dropped the wire.
Well,
so we just had to run out. He was a little frozen.
I was going to make jokes about Cresco's phone system, but I'm glad I did happen.
I wouldn't be complete if I didn't have a technical difficulty moment.
Well, the timing was perfect.
Before I lose you, though, Mike, because we had another technical question come in, and I'm going to jump back to the production side of things before I ask if you've grown any of the Hello Kitty Princettias. One of our listeners is asking, what is fascination? You've mentioned fascination a few times.
Yep, fascination is it's a gibberellin. Actually, a couple types of gibberellic acids that are used for various purposes in the greenhouse. One is they work well in geraniums to overcome any ethylene damage, like for unrooted cuttings or rooted geraniums coming in. It's used on lilies and other crops to prevent lily-type crops, to prevent leaf drop. It's used for expansion of tissue or overcoming overgrowth-regulated plants from, say, a bonsai effect. And in mums and poinsettias, it can use to speed up flowering in mums and poinsettias. It will actually speed bract development, expansion of the bract, and also, of course, you can move them forward by usually about a half a week. And that application is usually made at low rates just to glisten, and a couple of weeks ahead of market date is when you normally would apply. And it's used as a single application. One of the risks with fascination, because it's a gibberellin, the opposite of most of our plant growth regulators, it can give you some elongated stems or elongated leaves. So you want to be careful with it and not just start, throwing it around. And so low rates always first when you're working with fascination. Good product to get to know, though.
There you go. There's one for Patty. And Lori, we'll get to your question as soon as we get to the Q&A period, but let's finish up the Hello Kitty marketing here, shall we? Or maybe move on to Sunshine City's shopping mall. Tell us about this, Delilah.
Right. Tokyo has some very impressive shopping centers, and so 2 years ago, they went with a really bold pink theme for the Christmas season, and what perfect plant to use but Princettia. So the whole shopping mall got the Princettia treatment that year. And then now we're on to Europe, where here you can see they've embraced the little frog with the crown as their Princettia icon or logo. And the frog, Chris, what do they call the frog king over there?
That's the Froschkönig in Germany primarily. It's very popular. Anybody who reads me and pays attention to Green Profit knows how much I love the Froschkönig.
So they've embraced that for the Princettia brand. The whole idea, you kiss enough frogs, you'll find your prince. So there's the Princettia, and here you can see the modern European style pot cover containers, and they also had some matching gift tote bags.
Beautiful.
And then just at the IPM show a couple months ago, actually, in January, these sleeves for Princettia, you can also see, the frog on there again, and this has more of like a purple magical look, and then around the clear perimeter, messages about, the uses for the plant. And so these are the floral sleeves that they are using in Europe for Princettia.
Yeah, reading backwards, it says patio and indoor. Interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And then so far in the States, we've had a couple of tag designs available, the most recent being the more upright, stick-in tag, which we work with John Henry on. So right now with Plantpeddler, we are working on, more complete packaging options and value added to make it easy for the growers to go to market with a package. But if people only want a tag and want to pick their own pot covers, that's available too. And the tag is not mandatory, but the best opportunity is to promote the Princettia brand instead of just throwing the product out there anonymously, I believe.
And Mike, you wanted to take an opportunity to kind of talk to the audience a little bit about POP and the opportunities there.
Yeah, we talk a little bit about how do we separate this in the marketplace, and one way is the value-added component. It's taught a long time ago by Norm White that sometimes it's not the value of the product, it's the value of the product image we create by the accessories that we add. And this is one of those examples that if we're going to make Princettia special for the North American market, we can look at the Asian market and the European market and see the success is partly built by how they've positioned and branded the product. This plant does lend itself as a golden opportunity for our industry to embrace a plant for breast cancer. Mentioned it to several people along the way. This really, to us, is a natural to work with your local community that you service, the stores that are in that community, whether it's traditionals, grocery, or other, and develop programs that help the local community. And to do that, we need to have packaging and systems in place, POP systems in place for growers that would be pointed towards breast cancer awareness or those types of functions of fundraising. So we're really open, Delilah, myself, and others at Suntory, to knowing if there's interest from growers in us helping develop marketing programs for Princettia. It's an opportunity for us to build some ground support for how we may position this product in the future for that intent and purpose and move it away from just a Christmas commodity. So the suggestions would be appreciated. If anybody does have interest in that, to contact Delilah or myself. We'd love to hear what your thoughts are.
All right, I'll give both your emails at the very end. How about
So
outdoors?
now,
This is interesting.
Yeah, this is just amazing. I know in Cleveland it's hard to imagine using it, but in markets like San Diego or Florida and Texas, this would be great, I think, in the fall. Right here, this is in Tokyo, a very large statement bed in October is the time that they plant this. So, October through the rest of the year, they have Princettias prominently in the city. And then here's another gorgeous, outdoor waterfall, urban setting, just gorgeous. And, very low maintenance for the landscape. This is the Ginza shopping district. You can even see in the light pink bed, they put some lights in to create that bling at night. Just beautiful.
And mentioning the bling part too, we did test this with all of the Glockner glues, glitters, shimmers, and everything did test through good with no phytotoxic reactions to any of the materials, at least that Glockner has on the market at this time.
And you said they really pop.
Oh, this is a natural one. If you want to have a bling product at Christmas, the colors are so eye-popping and unforgettable, and you put a little bit of shimmer or glitter with it, and you can really create some very special-looking plants.
And what was our New Year's idea?
I loved your New Year's idea yesterday, Chris, and that's take the white, do a black treatment on it so it's a tuxedo look, a little bling with that. It could even be black bling or black glitter. It would be pretty cool for an option for a New Year's item that's a little beyond. But I think there's sky's the limit on the creativity portion of what can be done. It's really limited by only our imaginations.
Yeah, a little white tie pot cover. I've got it all figured out.
Yeah, it'd be cool.
How about indoors, Delilah.
Yes, so the project we did at Beam Suntory headquarters, which has more than 400 employees in there, and this is the liquor part of the business. Jim Beam was acquired by Suntory a year ago. So in addition to arranging for the plants, which were delivered and then refreshed a few weeks later from Plantpeddler, we worked with the professional interiorscaping team for that building, Mimosa. And as soon as the plants were delivered, the man in charge of Mimosa, he immediately saw the qualities where he was like, wow, I never really cared for pink poinsettias before, but I really like these colors. And so he and the crew building, they were just so delighted to do something other than red, because about a third of their building clients do a holiday display. And then this is out in the atrium before you go into the offices. All year they've got green plants and trees, but then there are pops of colors in color bowls. You can see Max White and also the hot pink. And then, you're looking through the glass, you can see into the office. This is the next slide is the waiting area, while you're waiting at reception. By the elevator, a huge urn, with the wavy willow tree accents coming out of the branches. Right by the elevator there, everybody can see. So that was one of the most fun projects I've ever been involved in.
And when you, at least from what we've been able to gather from Europeans and Asians, Delilah, correct, we typically see better tolerance to cold, drafty conditions, some of the conditions in interiorscape that challenge traditional poinsettias. This plant seems to overcome some of those problems that are inherent to poinsettias.
And with Mimosa, being a major metropolitan service provider, I'm really excited to see if they bring this to more clients, come next fall.
That's a good segue, though, Mike, to the question that Lori had asked, and I think that was right when we lost your phone connection, so you may not have heard the question. She said she had Princettias at Christmas. Customers really loved the look of them, but they didn't hold up as well as, quote, regular poinsettias. The bracts started falling off by mid-December. She said this happened in our store, so I assume she's a retailer, and in her customers' homes. Why did this happen, she asks?
Yeah, and I think I said it to myself because nobody was listening to me anymore, but it's a little bit surprising. We had done similar, we did some retail testing and just consumer testing in our own home against top-known varieties like Prestige and White Star and others. And if there's anything that we feel comfortable with, and this is also based on documentation from growers in those other major markets where it's been successful, is that it is more durable and tolerates the conditions of in-home and in retail better than traditional poinsettias. So hopefully what Lori saw was an isolated incident. Would love to talk to her more about what may have gone on, or if the plants possibly would have been chilled in transit, getting them to her if we had some significant chilling injury. But otherwise, it doesn't make a lot of sense based on what we know. Now, obviously, we're all still learning this crop, so there is no set rules yet until we get a little deeper into everybody playing with it, learning it, growing it. But that has not been the norm for Princettia. It's usually the comments are always quite the opposite, is that it has a very strong shelf life, good branch attachment. It should not have gone down on her in retail and in consumer homes. So I don't have a solid answer.
You talk about blooming them for October. Would they still hold up through Christmas if you bloom them that early? Maybe that was the issue.
Yeah, depends on when they were forced for Laura. We feel that you're probably looking at, as is typical, a 4 to 6 week window for peak retailability or for consumability. So if you're looking, and that's why, again, I kind of lean towards that mid-October date, because if you get mid-October, you get into the December, early December period before it may start to go the other direction. But those are good questions, Chris. Until we get more in the field, from our experience, we really saw a long shelf historically, especially this year when we did a larger block and we had it in installations. I know at Beam Suntory and talking to the landscaper, they were quite pleased with how it held up in that environment of an interiorscape environment, and did not even really look like it was needing a change out. So there are some things that we feel are there. We need to all prove it up a little bit more, but I do feel that we'll have somewhere around that 6-week good shelf life for consumer and retailers.
All right. Well, Lori, you'll be able to shoot Mike an email if you want more thoughts on that.
I know when they were doing the change out at Beam Suntory, all the employees were asking if they could take the plants that were being changed out home. So they must have still looked good, because I was asked if they could take them home. I said, yeah, sure. We don't want you to throw them away if they look good. So they were changing out on schedule, but the plants still looked good enough that people wanted to take them home.
All right. So to wrap up.
Yes, seize the opportunities, and philosophically, Suntory's always been going after new markets, not commodity markets, creating new markets, new opportunities. Suntory's not interested in the commodity business. So this is, what we covered, the opportunities: florists, garden centers, supermarkets, charitable causes, landscapers, interiorscapers. The sky's the limit.
But you're not pushing as hard on the outside the traditional poinsettia season as maybe you and others were when some of these first Euphorbia hybrids came on the marketplace, and we were talking about Easter and Mother's Day and things like that. Why is that?
It's just been too much of a struggle to get people to change what they normally do. So we've had some limited experience and success with Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, but we thought let's really get this going in what people are comfortable with, and then start playing around with other things.
Yeah, it's the feeling that, and when we were approached by Suntory to help them with this project, they were still really inherent on us having a year-round opportunity with the product. We're all growers. We have plenty of things we can produce for Mother's Day. There's really dominated by cut flowers now at Valentine's Day, so there's not as much potted flowering demand. In the U.S., we have a market that is heavily Christmas-based for poinsettia, where it's not quite as strong in Europe and Asia. And so the easy route into market, an easy route for us to get this plant as growers into our retailers, is in and around that Christmas window. If we can use it as a tool to build new sales and new opportunities for businesses in October, hopefully through breast cancer and through other means, breast cancer awareness, and help. I lost a sister-in-law in the Chicago area to breast cancer, so it touches us at Plantpeddler very closely. If we can create those opportunities, then October is an easy month because we're already in that poinsettia production mode. So there's, from a grower's perspective, I think we focus in on what we know, and that's how to produce a fall crop of poinsettias. I've grown poinsettias for things like the Ohio Short Course and other spring shows, and is a more challenging animal when you're under short days producing a crop that needs long days for its start. So the easy way into growers to get to see this product is to produce it with your Christmas crop. If you have access to black cloth, you may want to produce some earlier into the market. They're really great decorator colors, so they'll tend to sell very nicely on the early side of the sales routine. And that's a great starting point to get into it. It does force any time of year. What Chris has said is true. We actually are working, hopefully, with Bachman's on having some of this at the Macy's show in Minneapolis in the white form, because it does lend itself to other seasons. So,
and Sandra, one of our listeners, one of our listeners, is saying that she thinks it'd be a great potted plant option for Valentine's Day. And there you're only talking, 6 weeks from the end of the year. You think that would be pretty easy to do?
Yeah, that's it's a relatively easy crop. You would need to light it prior to the short day, so you count back 8 weeks, and your lighting at that point. You should be under naturally short days as long as you're dark out in the greenhouse, and you'd easily drop it in for a Valentine's Day finish. You're under extremely short days, so kind of the opposite of when we were talking the summer production for October that you may accelerate. Everything happens a little bit slower as we get in those really short days. So you may want to allow yourself a little extra time to make sure you have adequate start and black period, and just watch your temperatures, of course, if you're going to Valentine flower it.
Right. I think she says she may try a Pretty in Pink promotion.
That'd be gorgeous.
All right.
The colors are perfect for, I mean, they're shocking hot.
Yeah, well, we've got, let's see, one last question out here we haven't tackled along the way. This is from Danny. He wants to know, this is for you, Mike, how cold tolerant is Princettia considering winter shipping temperatures? What's the lowest temperature they'll endure?
We've addressed a little bit of that where we were talking about post-harvest, and what we've seen in some of our tests at Plantpeddler, the data, that it generally appears to be more cold tolerant than traditional poinsettias. I still feel, though, as you would with traditional poinsettia, that if we can avoid chilling injury and transport, which means we probably want to be in that 45, say 50-degree mark, if we can hold there for the transit portion of the product, I believe that would be in the range. I would not subject it to temperatures less than 40 if I could help it during the final delivery to customer.
All right, here's another question. Emily is a PhD student and is hoping to do research on poinsettias for her dissertation. Wonders, is it proprietary information what species Princettias have bred into them? I somehow think we're not going to reveal that.
Yeah, I believe it's proprietary. I don't even know what they are. So yeah.
Yeah, the Japanese guys are going to tell you. And it was bred in Australia. We can say that much, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
That's
all
a
right.
pretty big family. And I know a lot of the breeders have been playing around with different Euphorbia crosses, not just in the poinsettia lines, but because of the diversity of that family. There's quite a bit of work that goes on in that group. So there's a lot of different genotypes out there.
Yeah, I suspect at the breeder level and research level, that information is probably pretty easy to come by once you're kind of in that realm. My own Jennifer Zirko wants one of the Hello Kitty dolls, so Delilah, if you want to arrange that for her. I hear chuckling outside in the hallway right now. And let's see, Roger, well, he'd love to see the Max White at Easter. Wonders if it's marketable for that. That's getting, I mean, I think you've addressed that, Mike. Doable, but much trickier because you're going to be growing it at the cold time. But maybe for a southern grower, you know, where heat's not much of an issue, nor is day length.
Definitely would lend itself easy, and it is as white as an Easter lily is white. It's probably whiter than an old Nelly white. It's the brightest white that I've seen in almost any plant in our business. It's that pure. You know, so you have the deep intensity of the pinks, and you have a white that's shockingly white. So for Easter, it would make a great play, the white as an alternative white flower for that holiday.
I liked it in that landscape in a shady spot against the foliage, you know, that bright light popping out of there. It was really striking. Sandra wants to know if overwatering is a danger during growing, is it also more of a danger at retail than with a regular poinsettia?
I don't think there's any significant challenges at finish that would be unexpected as far as in the post-harvest cycle. Most people tend to, if they're going to be overwaterers, they're going to overwater all the poinsettias, including the Princettias. If they're underwaterers, they're going to run everything too dry, and the Princettia probably is a little better off. But I wouldn't expect to see any significant differences or challenges with Princettia post-harvest. I think the only adjustments you need to be concerned with are more on that front side, and most of that on the early side of that production when you're just getting the crop established and into the canopy stage. All
right. Another couple of questions here. They're coming in hot and heavy now. We're going to compare it to one of the other Euphorbia poinsettia hybrids on the market, Love You Pink. How does it compare vigor-wise? Mike, do you have experience with Love You Pink, the Eckie variety?
Yeah, considerably more controlled and compact in Princettia. From our experience and what I've seen at other producers, I did visit quite a few Princettia trial customers this fall that had some I Love You Pink. It's a much more manageable plant. I Love You Pink can get up and rangy a bit more. It may work well for its own application, but if you're looking for a more mounted, controlled habit, easy to grow, Princettia is a much better series than you will find with I Love You Pink.
That's Emily writing in from Hawaii. And thank you, Emily, for not taunting us with the weather report, as we all report here from Cresco, Cleveland, Chicago. And then let's see, any special fertilizer requirements? Mike, you said just poinsettias.
If you have a good poinsettia routine that works well in your operation, I would adapt that to Princettia. You should be pretty close to spot on. Again, minor adjustments because of the lower vigor till you get the crop well established. But I'd follow my normal routines that work well. That's what we've done, and we were very successful in the production.
All right, and that information is pretty widely available from poinsettia companies and distributors. Last question, then we're going to have to sign off. Regarding fascination, Jamie wants to know, does it help keep the bracts on the plants longer, like with Easter lilies, where fascination helps prevent, leaf yellowing and drop? Do anything for post-harvest?
To the best of my knowledge, I do not believe it has a similar effect. I do think, and I could be wrong, that a lot of the effect that we see in lilies is because it helps control ethylene as that plant matures, where we're really not dealing with an ethylene issue in poinsettias. So really in the poinsettia, we're using fascination only as needed if we need to get a little more bract expansion on the flowers themselves. So different application that we're using the gibberellic for. I don't think you'll see any real changes, plus or minus, in keeping qualities.
Beautiful. Mr. Gooder, you know your stuff, and that's why we've got you here. All right, well, that's all the time we have for questions. But if you have any more, if it didn't get answered, or if you have thoughts as you go along, you can easily email either Delilah or Mike, and you see their email addresses right here, donofrey@gmail.com or mikeg@plantpeddler.com. And, of course, you'll be able to look at these again in the archive. And this webinar will be archived. Hopefully within the hour, certainly this afternoon. So if you want to relive it, if you've got colleagues who you'd like to see it, or customers or anyone else, you can direct them to it as well. And it's at ballpublishing.com webinars, where you can also, I'll put in a quick little pitch here, sign up for our 3 upcoming webinars. I'm going to be busy on the air the next couple of weeks. Next Tuesday, a big one, neonics and alternatives. That is a must-attend. Should you drop neonics from your production regime, or should you keep them? And I know a grower who has done both, so you want to tune in for that one. We've got 4 different speakers there. Hydroponic lettuce, Wednesday, March 4th, and then a really interesting one on overcoming PGR overdoses and knowing how to identify them. That's Wednesday, March 11th. So there's some upcoming webinars. Thank you again, Delilah and Suntory Flowers, for sponsoring this webinar. We greatly appreciate it. And really, that's pretty much it. So for Delilah, for Mike, for all the folks at Suntory, Plantpeddler, and Ball Publishing, this is Chris Beytes saying so long, everybody.